sound. Hopefully this will work.
Hi there, and welcome to the Systems Engineering Body of Knowledge, also known as the SEBoK. SEBoK is a product of a joint venture between INCOSE, the International Council of System Engineering, Stevens Institute of Technology, and the IEEE Systems Council. I'm Rob Cloutier, the editor-in-chief. The SEBoK was first released in September of 2012, and since then we've had a continuous and active editorial board of system engineering experts responsible for curating the system engineering body of knowledge. While the SEBoK is hosted on a wiki platform, we only update it on a biannual basis. Our primary stakeholders include practicing system engineers, customers of system engineering, researchers, students of system engineering, and of course the colleges and university faculty that actually use the SEBoK as their material for the courses and curriculum that they teach. As such, our goal is to continue to be a living, authoritative guide to the knowledge of system engineering, most relevant and important to the advancement of system engineering. Our numbers bear this out. In 2016, the SEBoK had a lifetime total of over 571,000 visitors. In August of 2021, 5 years later, that number had grown to over 2.6 million lifetime visitors and a total of 5.5 million page views. When printed in a traditional manner, the SEBoK contains over 2,000 pages, representing over 200 articles on system engineering and related topics. The content has been created by over 100 volunteers. If you'd like to get involved and become a contributor or an editor, please contact either Nicole Hutchinson, the managing editor, or myself, Rob Cloutier.
Okay, so that was quite a nice introduction for what the SEBoK is all about. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to share the hopefully. Can you see that's all okay? Yeah. Can someone just respond and let me know you can see that all right?
Yeah. I can see it.
Okay, good.
I was muted.
No, it's all right. So the SEBoK is split into 8 sections, and there's a graphic here that actually shows it. We can open that up, I guess. Okay, so there's the full structure. So there's an introduction to the SEBoK. We then have part 2, the Systems Engineering Foundations, and that's the part that I have the honour and the pleasure of being the senior editor for that. We have part 3, which is essentially let's say the shared orientation in terms of the systems engineering processes. That's based on an international standard, ISO 15288. So our processes, our standard life cycle representation is described here. And this includes both the technical management aspects and also the technical process aspects. Part 3 is about the application of systems engineering in particular contexts. 5 is about enabling systems engineering in terms of the enterprise, the capabilities of the people, the teams, enabling good systems engineering. We've got a part on related disciplines like risk management and project management, for instance. And we have another section on implementation examples. And there's now an 8th area as well, which is about emerging knowledge. So that's the overall structure. And if we go into the foundation of systems engineering, we have systems engineering fundamentals. We have the nature of systems, which is a new section which has been newly created in the current release. We have a section on a subsection on system science, subsection on systems thinking, representing systems with models, and systems approaches applied to systems engineering. And the structure of this part has recently been, let's say, evolved to better show the relationship between these things, and to help to facilitate a closer connection with part 3, which includes all of this kind of stuff, stakeholder needs, business and mission analysis, architecture, detailed design, system analysis, realization. So myself and the part 3 editor have been having conversations about how to better relate this content to this content. It is an evolution, this particular structure. The reason why we evolved it and changed it is because is to try and tighten up the integration between the things, because each of the things had previously been defined to some extent, and I'm overemphasizing a little bit, to some extent they've been written with a more sort of silo focus. So we're taking a more systems perspective of part 2 as a whole and how it relates to part 3. A lot of the content is I would say, is quite dated, because the SEBoK is about 10 years old, and although there has been new articles and some enhancement of the material, a lot of the material is old and really needs a significant refresh to take advantage of all of the progress that has essentially been made over the last 10 years. So in systems thinking, for instance, we've got, what is systems thinking, concepts of systems thinking, principles of systems thinking, and patterns of systems thinking. But there's no mention in this section of, for instance, DSRP, the Waters Foundation, and all of the other, works on systems thinking, like the School for Systems Change, etc. So there's a lot of work needs to be done to this area. In system science, we've got the history of system science, system approaches, complexity, emergence, but there's a load of other, let's say, important topics of system science which are missing in here. In the nature of systems, we have an introductory article on the nature of systems. We then look at the types of systems, and currently we have the first of, I hope, a number of articles on, let's say, key system concepts. And here we give voice to cycles and the cyclic nature of systems, which George and Tyler and many others contributed to. But we would like to have a series of articles here related to these different facets of systemness. And I'm hoping that the work that Lynn, for instance, has been doing, giving voice to that content, I'm hoping that we can make real use of that in that area. In the system engineering fundamentals, we've got an introduction to systems engineering fundamentals. We've got systems engineering core concepts. These are concepts more related to the core concepts of systems engineering. We've got systems engineering principles and systems engineering heuristics. And David Rousseau and others have been contributing to this area. Again, what we want to do is we want to make a tighter link between this, the system science, the nature of systems, systems thinking. In representing systems with models, we start to introduce modeling as a concept. It's an entry point into what's currently known as and portrayed as model-based systems engineering. So this is moving away from the typical documentation-based approaches that we've applied in the past to our engineering, and moving to a more digital approach where we take advantage of computing and digitalization and the integration of models. And the final section is all about the systems approaches and how you pick good systems approaches, tailored to the needs of the particular situation. And then all of this together then leads into this part. So I'm open to questions and ideas for exploration now, and I'd really like, as I said, I'd really like to hear from Lynn as well, in terms of the stuff that she's been doing, and also perhaps how we might take advantage of some of the material in your new book as well, George. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavour of what this is all about. Each of those articles is intended to be an entry point into knowledge, a summary of established wisdom with appropriate references. So people can then, use that entry point to go off onto other resources, whether it's wiki pages or libraries or books or papers. And each of those articles is typically written by a team of people. And as senior editor, my job is to try and make sure that all of this shape comes together as a whole. Yeah, I can give you a flavour of a couple of the more recent articles, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think Lynn might have actually. Did you contribute to this one as well, Lynn? I'm not sure.
I think I did it at some point.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah. So cycles and the cyclic nature of systems. This is just an introduction to it. Yeah. Several really useful and complementary definitions. So a cycle is a series of events that are regularly repeated in the same order, or move in or follow a regular repeated sequence of events according to the Oxford English Dictionary. Cycles define and make things. Equally, things contain cycles from Volk. Mobus and Calton describe a cycle as a temporary pattern. The foundation for the study of cycles describes a cycle as a series of events that are regularly repeated in the same order. So, some useful primary references to the definition of cycle, and I think we will need to revisit this when we get Lynn's publication as well, because she's probably dug up a lot more that we had from this point. Again, some examples of cycles, and it's important to systemists. We've got this diagram which shows different kinds of cycles. So cycles with a defined end, cycles with no defined end, physical movement, substance transformation, state maintenance cycles, hypercycles. So lots of different kinds of cycles, all gathered from Wikipedia, and Tom Maslow put this together for us, which is really nice. We've got essentially the cyclic nature of systems. So this relates to the Holon model, which John Kinnaman has been working on, and this is an extension of relational theory from Robert Rosen. We've got Len's work on the unbroken sequence of system origins, which is really nice, and this shows this pattern of diversification, affordances for new relationships, integration, and sustainment. And we see this going through all of the different holons and systems in the universe. And we make some connections of this to technical management, for instance, and our engineering processes. So it was a relatively short article. This was our first exploration, really, in terms of this kind of article. But the idea is that we pick concepts of real significance for systems engineering, and we would put all of that in a section on the nature of systems. And the other new article that we've recently had, so I don't know if you came across Randall or Amway in any of the sessions so far, but Randall is from the Natural Systems Working Group alongside Paul and Kurt, and they put this article together on the nature of systems. So they've got system worldviews, definitions of problems of terminology, the value of systems knowledge, a set of system concerns, gaining a feel for systems, and the value of a system science foundation for systems engineers. So that was their contribution on the nature of systems. I gave them a little bit of a steer. They didn't do exactly what I was expecting, but the article that they produced, I think, was really useful as a starting point. So that gives an idea for how these kind of things came together. I set the challenge with Kurt to write an article on the nature of systems, and I said the Natural Systems Working Group should really contribute to this. So him and his team, put this together, and I reviewed it and checked that it was consistent with the SEBoK, and that's the kind of thing that happened. Yeah. But what I'd really like is for people within the community, to pick up responsibility for a particular article, for instance, like what is systems thinking. This was originally written by Rick Adcock, who did an amazing job and tons of work. He was supported by Brian Wells and Bud Lawson, yeah. And it's pretty good. What's there is pretty good. You know, I couldn't say this is wrong, but it needs a significant refresh and connection with some of the great stuff that's going on at the moment. Yeah. So
yeah.
that's what I'm looking for.
Just to ask, do you have any obvious gaps that you're looking to fill?
Yeah. Lots.
You have a short list of possible gaps.
Yeah. If I might share my screen again. Where is it? It's one of these. This is one of the problems. This is one of the things I don't really like with the way. I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment and find the screen I want to share and then share it. Right. Okay. So I won't go into how this came about, yeah. But what we've got across the top is essentially different stages or phases, if you like, of aspects of knowledge. It follows the relational theory and the scientific method itself. So we have ideas. Ideas are brought together in terms of general theory frameworks. From those frameworks, you're able to derive principles for how you act. When you apply those principles, you create assets, and those assets then engage in nature and society. Yeah, and that aligns with the nature of the relational holon. I could just go very quickly through this, and we did some really interesting mapping preliminary with Thomas Wong earlier today. So everything in the universe is a source and sink of signals and data, and when those signals interact with something which is capable of receiving that signal, there's an informational event. Informational events over time build up in terms of essentially the knowledge of the thing, and is resident in the structure of the thing. So every single thing in the universe is essentially a representation or an integration of knowledge, the knowledge that essentially forms that thing. The knowledge inherent in the thing provides forces which essentially constrain the parts and organize the parts, and this manifests in terms of forces which act on mass and energy of material things, and those things then lead to new sources and sinks of signals. So, and we see this pattern repeated in all systems, and I think this also reflects on the Eastern philosophy and those elemental concepts that they use in terms of water, wood, fire, metal, and the earth. Yeah. But when you play that out in the scientific process, which is itself a system, yeah, this is what the system looks like: ideas, general theory frameworks, principles, assets, and the impact of those assets on nature and society. So that's one dimension of the framework for integrating knowledge. This is our knowledge of concepts. This is our knowledge of general theory frameworks in the context of systems. These are principles for deciding within the context of systems. These are the assets that we create, and this is the context of the whole. I think I might have shared this with you at some time previously, Joe. Here we've got categories of knowledge, and this is borne out through an instantiation of holarchy. Essentially, we've got the form of things, the function of things, and the fitness of things in the context of the wider environment. Yeah. So the form of things is related to the identity of the wholes and the togetherness of the thing. So this This is the other aspect of form, is the behavior of the wholes and the processes of things. Function relates to the cycles of the wholes and the phases of things. The capabilities of the whole and the purpose of things. The fitness is determined by the value of the whole and the qualities of the things, and the consciousness of the wholes and the experience of the things. So when we look at the concepts, and I'm not saying this is right, but this is just to give you a feel for the kind of concepts which relate to these categories. So here we've got the more static things related to form, like structure, component, boundary, boundedness, holarchy, topology, wholeness, integration, integrity, networks. This is the more static view. And then you've got the more dynamic view. So activity, dynamics, influence, interaction, dependency, feedbacks, all syncs, that kind of stuff relates to the behavior of whole and the process of things. Then we've got, you see, yeah, so these are the concepts related to these categories. This is this is the placeholder for the theories related to these categories. These are the principles which would be derived from these theories. And then we come to taxonomy, a taxonomy of assets, and also a taxonomy of wholes. So we've got the taxonomy of togetherness. So this would be for instance, the different kinds of binding or bonding forces that we see between systems. We've got a taxonomy of processes, a taxonomy of phases, a taxonomy of purposeful systems, and I think we can draw on Miller here. A taxonomy of qualities, so this is virtues from Rousseau. But in engineering, we call these essentially the non-functional aspects, the qualities aspects. So, availability, maintainability, supportability, even beauty, yeah, that's here. We got a taxonomy of experiences. So every single thing in the universe is capable of an experience, but the more complex something is, the richer its experience. Yeah, so we have a very rich experience in our lives. So in terms of things that are missing, we've done an article on the cycle of the cyclic nature of systems, but we're missing also articles on identity and togetherness, behavior and processes, capabilities of wholes and purpose of things. So there's a lot of stuff, yeah. And then when we look at the positive flow of activity in the system space. So these are, I wasn't expecting to show all this, but this is what happened. So what we've got here, we've got transformational powers from Bill Smith's AIC theory. We've got system pathologies, which are the clouds. So these are the pathologies we see in our organizations and our daily lives, yeah. And there are pathways to engage with these powers, from which we've mapped all of many of the heuristics from systems thinking and systems engineering, and we've given voice to the pathway. So to get out of confusion and complexity, you generate hypotheses using the power of theory, yeah. Another pathway to resolve that is to explore potential through the power of technical. So no vision of the future situation, giving voice to future possibilities. That's an engagement with the political power. Also mapped on Belbin onto this. I don't know if you're familiar with Belbin team roles, but you can see how the traits which make up successful teams pretty much cover the full space. And this is why when Belbin did his experiments, he found that effective teams had contributions from all of these different character traits. Yeah. So these are the positive pathways. We've also got the negative pathways. Yeah. So this is how powers are corrupted in what Victor calls the shadow system. Yeah. So these things are going on all the time in our established systems too. Yeah. Reluctance to change. A lot of these are given in the human context, to make it obvious. But we also see these same pathways at play in nature as well, with lens isomorphies. So there's just so much yeah, that somehow needs to all be integrated. There's tons of it, yeah. But from what I've seen, you know, everything that we do and practice in systems, you know, it's all mappable to this. So ODA, you know, observe, orient, decide, and act, plan, do, check, act, kind of thin, personality traits, you know, the Tao Te Ching, you know, the 5 elements, everything can be integrated, yeah. And it's not a case of whose is best. It's a case of all of this stuff is actually complementary. You know, it's the, what do they call it, Lynn? Is it the pluralist approach, yeah, where you know, you choose your method and approach based on the people that you're working with and the situation. So you use what is most appropriate.